Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for sitting down and getting relaxed and joining my presentation for this amazing family recovery conference. Uh, I love being a part of this. I'm so blessed to be a part of it. I wish there was something like this when my daughter first started struggling. I had no idea what to do or where to turn, and it was some of the hardest moments of my life, feeling very alone and very isolated. And it's a big reason, honestly, that I decided to become a family recovery coach, focusing on the families that are affected by this disease. And I'm really honored to be a part of this discussion today, specifically on stigma and shame. I think we're all here or you're watching because someone that you love is struggling or maybe has struggled in some way, shape, or form, and you're looking for answers, for insight, for help, guidance. And if you hear my dog bark, by the way, sorry, this is what happens when we work from home. Oh, God, she's going right now. Anyways, you get it. It's just life. So I think if you're watching, one, I want you, before we really get into the depth of this, I want you to take a really big, deep breath and hold it for 4 counts. And then breathe out for 4 counts. So I want you to be relaxed and in the right frame of mind to engage and truly listen, not only with your mind, but with your heart. Trying to block out whatever outside things are going on in your life at this moment. For me, I'm trying to block out my barking dog. But I want you to know also that you're not alone, that you are loved, you are cared for, and there are thousands of families just like us out there that are struggling. So what is stigma? Well, I'm going to actually read you a definition. It's kind of interesting. The classic definition refers to stigma as an attribute that is deeply discrediting. It also adds an element of power. Stigma exists when elements of labeling, stereotyping, separation, status loss, and discrimination occur together in a power situation that allows them. I think about that in a number of different ways. Power is one of them, and we'll get to that in a little bit. I remember in the beginning when my daughter first began this journey, you don't want to tell anyone, right? And in the beginning, also, you're afraid. You're afraid of what others will think. Is it just a phase that your child is going through? Or at least I can only speak on behalf of myself. Maybe it'll go away. Maybe she'll get better. I was never, ever, ever ashamed of my daughter. Not once. I didn't want anyone to know because I was trying to protect her from their judgment. I didn't want her to be judged based on her struggles, judge her as a person. And I'll be very honest here, I never had any kind of exposure to addiction really in my life. Maybe some relatives had struggled with alcohol here and there, but definitely not, excuse me, definitely not opiates. especially that word, that taboo word, right? Heroin. It's like the whispered word. And quite frankly, my only exposure to it was something that I had seen in the movies or on TV, and it was never in a really positive light, right? Never once did I envision my daughter. And I will be the first to admit that I think I had some judgment back then. I was not educated, and I don't consider myself a judgmental person whatsoever. I love all kinds of people and situations, always trying to give someone the benefit of the doubt. But when it came to drugs, I taught my kids, you stay away from them and anyone that uses them. You are who you hang out with, right? They were the bad people. I'm ashamed of my thoughts now, because that was someone's child, someone that is just lost. And I've learned so much along the way, and I'm very open admitting to my faults and things that I have experienced with judgment. It's been very unfortunate. And I think probably many of you can identify with that. I remember the first time actually that I went to a support group. It took me a really long time to reach out for help. And then I promised my husband that I would go. Promise, promise, promise. So I found a group, and I drove to the church. It was in church. And I pulled into the parking lot, and I parked, and I sat there for the entire hour, and I cried my eyes out in the car. And I never got out. And then when the hour was up, I drove home, and my husband said, "How was it? I'm so proud of you for going." And I lied. I said, "It was amazing. It was so good." Sorry, something just came up on my screen. Oh my gosh, don't even tell me. Oh, oh gosh. Hold on. I have to. Okay, so sorry about that. I had to pause because things were popping up on my screen all over the place and I couldn't get it out. Okay, excuse me. So I came home and he was like, "I'm so proud of you. You went." And he said, "How was it?" And I said, "It was fabulous." I totally lied. And I will tell you why. Oh, and he knows now, but pulling into that parking lot to walk in was so difficult for me because it was like it was making it real. And I was so afraid to walk in and potentially be judged by other people because I didn't know what I was walking into. So it was the unknown, and I was freaked out. And then coming home and not telling the truth to my husband, I was ashamed that here I am telling my daughter, "You need to go to your support groups. You need to be engaged." But yet, what was I doing? My fear held me back. My fear paralyzed me from walking in. So I can only imagine how it feels for others, whether you're a family member or whether you're someone that's struggling, to walk in to a meeting. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's reaching out and pushing past your own fears of saying, "I don't know what to do." And I get it. I completely understand. There is such stigma were afraid of what anyone would think. I know I was also very, very afraid to even start my blog. I founded a blog 3 years ago. It's mothersaddictionjourney.com, where I share about the journey and our stories with my daughter, and she shares as well. But I was really, really afraid to even start it because I have a younger daughter who is in high school. And I thought, if I share this and maybe her friends' parents see it, what if they don't let her hang out anymore? What if they judge her or me as a parent? And we had to really come to grips. And we sat down as a family. And if anyone was uncomfortable with anything that we talked about, it was off the table. And my little one, Brooke, such a great kid. She said, Mom, if it helps people, do it. My friends will love me for me. I was so proud of her. And it's true. And I keep those words in my head when I experience things. We experience it when we walk into an emergency room. Maybe our loved one had been there 2 weeks prior and we had to seek help again. And you can hear the nurses with their smirks or rushing you out of there. Remember, there was a time the daughter had overdosed and they wanted to release her. It was about 30 minutes after she had gotten there. And I was really mad. I was really mad. And they wanted to call security on me. Security? Me! I'm not a violent person. I mean, I wasn't making a big deal, but I said she needs medical care. But to them, she wasn't worth it. She wasn't worth the time. You go to a pharmacy trying to get a prescription filled, maybe of a medical assisted treatment. And you can feel the eyes of the pharmacist on you. Or if they're out of it, can you tell me where another pharmacy has it? And they're not willing to go that extra mile for you. It's no wonder so many of us become frustrated. So many of us become lost, not knowing what to do. And sometimes you hear comments like, where were the parents? Like we, as family members, caused their addiction. And I think for most of you, you're pretty good. You're pretty good parents. We're not perfect. We do the best that we can. I know I was the tooth fairy and the Easter bunny. I taught her catechism class and showed her how to ride her bike when the training wheels came off. You're there at the baseball games and the dance classes and the parent-teacher conferences. You were present. I was present. To hear these things and just in general conversation, and because of some of these comments and things that people say, it does make you very afraid to reach out and tell anyone what's going on. Education is key for this, to help I mean, it certainly was for me, learning how my daughter's brain was actually working. It helped me become more compassionate versus anger. It helped me deal with her with more communication and empathy versus anger and punishment. Because again, in the beginning, we don't know what to do. But this disease is very progressive. So try and get as educated as you possibly can. And when you're feeling that stigma, try and educate the person in front of you, not in an angry way. Help them understand. And I think, at least from a hospital perspective or a first responder, I do a lot of stigma training for first responders and physicians. They are seeing this on an everyday basis, all day long, and they're becoming somewhat hardened to it. And I get that. And they're frustrated. But to take that extra 15, 20 minutes and sit down with a family member and sit down with the person that is struggling, find out their story, not of why it was happening, but humanize them. Because this is someone's brother, an aunt, an uncle, friend, just like they are. And they need to be medically treated as such and not shunned from society like this is some kind of moral failing. I know also sometimes we don't want to say things to family members or to friends because when they're hearing it, they may start to feel they want to give advice and guidance. And it's usually coming unsolicited, right? And it's kind of like the people that give you advice on how to be a parent, but they don't have kids. Come on. And you appreciate their concern, but sometimes you just want somebody to listen to you, just to listen so you can vent, maybe give you a hug, say, let's go grab a cup of coffee. If you're getting unsolicited advice, it's a peanut gallery. Take it with a grain of salt, kind of maybe even use that if you want as an opportunity to educate them as well. Try not to take it personally because they don't know. No one knows how horrific this can be unless you're actually going through it. I think as a society in general, I mean, let's face it, we are pretty judgy. We're pretty judgy. Could be scrolling on Facebook and you're like, oh, seriously, Susan? You just talked about going on a diet 2 weeks ago and now you're saying you're doing it again. And, where's your dedication? And, I don't need to see 47 pictures of your food or whatever. We judge no matter what the situation is. And even with the people in this disease, you judge if a family member says, well, I didn't allow my child to live at home, we judge them. If you let them live at home, you judge them. If someone is on a MAP, we judge them. If they're not, it's just bizarre how we are in general so judgy, and we're not accepting of what may work for someone may not work for somebody else. Why do we do that? Is it our egos? Do we feel above others that our way is the best and our opinion is the only opinion that matters? I don't know. I just know for myself, fortunately, I think this journey has really made me into a better person. Because again, I never thought I was judgmental, but I guess I was. Because I never envisioned someone that used hard drugs to be my daughter or my neighbor or a cousin or a friend, right? Because it's affecting everyone. I just never, and I feel bad. But I know now that addiction, the stigma, it just refers to really a negative attitude towards something that people aren't familiar with and they're not educated on. And it's our job to try and not take it personally and try and educate them in the most compassionate way that we can, not to fight fire with fire, but educate in a kind and loving manner with empathy for them as well. I wish I had been explained a lot of this before, but I guess if you're not affected by it, you don't really pay attention to it. Just like, I guess for me, let's just say gun laws. I don't have a gun. My husband doesn't have, we don't have a gun in our house. So I have no idea about the laws and rules and why are we trying to pass this. And I really have no idea. I have no idea. The only thing that I can compare it to is that if you have a gun, it should be kept locked and safe in a location that really can't be reached unless you have a code or it needs to be extremely safe. Just like if you're taking medication, it needs to be locked up. It needs to be safe. It should not be available for anyone to just grab at any time. So I'm going to give you another example of stigma. And it's a big part of it is language. And I'm not going to go too much into language, but I will say using terminology is very, very important. I think I was certainly given a lot of poor advice along the way, very archaic advice. A lot of words were used and phrases were used. For example, the phrase of enabling, I didn't understand what it was. No one really explained it to me. But people would say, well, you need to stop killing your kids. Seriously? You're going to say that to a parent whose child could die any moment? And it's bringing us shame again. It's shaming us. You're killing your kid. Well, what does that mean? I understand the preface of it, but using a phrase like that is really, really harming families because now we're being lectured of what's happening, and we're just loving our kids in the best way that we know how. So please, if anyone is watching this and you've used that, please stop. Use that again as an opportunity to educate someone on what that actually means. And there's a difference. There is a big difference with healthy boundaries and support versus interfering. And that's what I like to think about it as. We don't want to interfere with natural consequences. We also don't want to interfere with their recovery program because it's their recovery. We need to work on ours. And we need to learn about things like this and how to properly communicate. I think statements like that, it brings fear to families. We feel accused, and it's just not healthy because it makes us again retreat because we're being judged on how we're doing things. But maybe that family member just doesn't know any better. They haven't been educated, or maybe they're not ready. Because we as families, you grow up and you're taking care of your child. You're keeping them safe. You're taking them to the doctors. You're changing their diapers. You're feeding them. You're showing them how to walk and doing all of these things as a caretaker would. And so when the disease begins, we don't know any better. So we're trying to make it better. We're trying to fix them. And just like anybody else, you're learning as you go along. And if I would have known a lot of these things prior and this stigma wasn't around, I think I probably would have been much more stronger early on in learning actually how to communicate and actually how to help in a way that's healthy. I never knew. Going to even some support group meetings, getting back to the word power. In many of these meetings, they say that we as families are powerless. And again, I understand it in a large form. Maybe we're powerless over the actual disease. But we as families have a lot more power than we realize or give ourselves credit for. And I believe in the power of love. I believe in the power of communication, and communication in the right way. I believe in the power of staying connected with your loved one, so they know that they are loved. They know that they are cared for. They know that we see them and we will accept who they are inside, because what's going on is not who they are. That they're sick and lost and struggling. And I will never abandon my child and cut off that communication. There is power with that. There is power in learning how to communicate in a different way with your loved one and with your spouse and with your other children, etc. That won't be such a struggle. Another thing that I have experienced is going to, when you go to a funeral and you might hear the phrase, gosh, they came from a really good family. What does that really mean? And I'm not saying someone that died of a disease. It could be anything, right? They came from a really good family. So what does that mean? Does that mean that because my daughter struggles, that we're a bad family? Are we a bad family? I don't think we're a bad family. But when we hear these phrases in our head, we do think we've become those people. So we don't want to say anything. And we keep it inside. And when we keep it inside, we become just as sick. Because we're isolating as well. We're not reaching out. I'm really, really glad that you joined me today. I could probably go on for another hour, but I just want you to know that when you experience this, I think if you could realize and help others realize that honestly, we're all struggling with something in life, whether it's addiction, whether it's divorce, maybe you got a really crappy boss. We're all struggling with something. But when we share those struggles with others, it can form a bond. It can form a trust with someone else. And then they may feel courageous and be able to share something back of what they're struggling with. And it can really bridge that gap of communication. When we share, again, no matter what it is, you're giving this in a healthy way. You're sharing in a healthy way. And you're letting others feel that they can trust you. And when they share, it can go on and on and on and create a movement. Instead of so many of us suffering in silence, talking about it openly and honestly is some of the best forms of healing that can be done. So thank you again. I'm Katie Donovan. I'm a family recovery coach, the host of the podcast, Taking Back Your Life. You can reach me at amothersaddictionjourney.com. Join our Facebook group, support group, whatever you need to do. But this is an awesome forum, and I'm so glad you joined today. Thank you so much.